I think love is a risk.
Number one thing is, do they love the Lord?
Where one of you has been spiritually strong and the other one was struggling? And how did that affect your dynamic?
There are times in marriage where one of us is strong, the other is weaker.
I don't know. Some people might find that controversial, but
Are there any spiritual disciplines that you could recommend that you've experienced to other married couples that would strengthen their marriage?
The one thing I want to make sure is that they have faith,
Okay, let's
that
talk.
they know Jesus.
So
Because I don't know how you navigate life without it.
Future starts right now. The future is now.
What's going on? Welcome back to the podcast, the Disciple Standard Podcast. My name's Aaron. I'm a pastor here at Sunlight, and we've got an awesome panel today. We have Mr. Multiply himself, Scott Vander Ploeg. Glad that you're here. And actually,
I'm waiting for this.
the first
What is
lady,
the title?
the
Oh,
first lady herself,
First lady.
Andrea Vander Ploeg, the wife of Mr. Multiply. Andrea, welcome to the podcast.
thank you. Thank you for having me as the first lady.
But hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Have you gotten a title for yourself yet?
So actually a comment in the last video, and Nick posted one. I want to see if you like it or not.
Okay.
He said, Anchorman.
Oh, it starts with A.
Anchorman. Your Anchorman.
I think you need an adjective to go with it, though. The only thing that came to mind first doesn't work. It was angry. The angry anchor
Angry,
man.
angry Anchorman.
The affable.
What?
I don't know. That's
That's a big word for
all right.
me.
We need an adjective with an A.
I'm not sure if Anchorman will stick. It'll be up to you guys to determine that. Actually, put it down in the comment section. Apt Anchorman. I'm thinking like something simple, like an Anchorman.
Oh, I like that. I like how you're going with that because I think if we get more A words in
Yeah.
there, an apt anchor man.
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
Triple A. Oh, that's a good one. Triple A.
Okay, I like AAA
Oh, that's
because I have two already. So Aaron. Aaron's typically the original starter.
Oh, wait. But now, if I think about your last name, you got two more A's in that. You could be Quad A.
oh boy.
Quad A. That sounds a little ethnic for me. I'm not too sure. All right, let's get to the topic here. The reason why I have both of you guys on the podcast, which is great. It's actually, have you done a podcast before? Like ever?
No.
Okay, so this
First time.
First time podcast. This is great. I thought the topic of marriage in general would be good, but wherever the conversation goes, but more towards like Mother's Day is coming up for us. By the time you're watching this, it would have been behind us. And so just kind of like in that realm, I wanted to just get to know you guys. If someone's new and we're just trying to set the stage for this podcast, how did you guys meet? Tell me about the story when Scott met Andrea.
I'd like to hear Andrea's give the story. This is our first podcast, and you're going right to it.
Yes.
Actually, I was thinking it'd be good to tell that story because I was thinking about that this morning. So what happened was little Scott Vander Ploeg grew up in Montana. Then he moved to Washington. Little Andrea grew up in Idaho all her life. Then when it was time for college, he was a year ahead of me. He went to Whitworth. Then when it's time for me to go to college,
Which is in Spokane, Washington.
Spokane, Washington. When it's time for me to go to college, I was kind of all over the place. But then I really felt like for some reason it was Whitworth and that like was the only thing I could put my eyes on. And so I didn't know anybody who was going there. But I was like, that's it. I'm going to go there. It's only 3 hours from home. It's drivable, all that stuff. So then I went to Whitworth and my world was completely flipped upside down because I met all kinds of different new people and everything about my perspective, everything changed. And so I had grown up in the church, but it was more like I had to go to church kind of a thing. Like, ugh, I gotta go, you know. But when I went to Whitworth and then they had like a chapel service for like all the students and stuff, and it was like there was kids like worshiping the Lord, and I'm like, they want to do this? Like, that's crazy. And then I just started like getting into Bible studies, and I was the Lord just totally flipped me upside down. And then it was like what, in October, probably maybe September. Okay, so we lived in Warren Hall, and so one day there was like a community service day in our dorm, and so we all like took a day off of class, and then everybody went and like served in the community. So I remember like we met in like one of the big rooms in the dorm, and we were like all together, and I remember seeing him, and I was like, he's very interesting. There was really something about him. Like, he was like, back in those days, he was kind of crazy, like really loud and a little obnoxious. But like, he was,
Obnoxious? No, not obnoxious.
yeah. Well, anyway.
But I think, yeah, I have
like
a very
more-
outgoing personality.
Yeah. And I was like, he's very interesting. And then,
Interesting. I like
okay.
that.
Then here's the part of the
Intriguing.
story that he loves. Okay, so then I was like, my interest was piqued, and I'm like, who is this person? And I don't know why, like, I wasn't looking for anything.
Well, you're looking for something.
No. And then I was at my dorm room, and my roommate had a yearbook, and so we were looking through the yearbook, and I was like, I'm gonna find this guy in here. Who is he? And then we were looking through, and then I saw Scott Vander Ploeg, and I'm like, what kind of name is that? And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I just tucked it in the back of my mind. Meanwhile, Mr. Rico Suave over here has like 3 girls that all like him. And then,
That's why he likes this story.
yes, that's why he likes this story. So anyway, then I would see him around, and then like I don't know, I didn't really like him. I was just more like, my interest was piqued. And then one day I come walking out of I open my dorm room, and there's him and a friend standing right in front of my door looking at like our little board in front of our dorm room. And I was like, hey. And then, okay, so then I started liking him.
Well, hold on. But now the explanation of that is that I was in a conversation with some friends about these multiple girls who all were interested in me. And so they didn't know who they all were. So we had kind of gone around, because oftentimes people on their dorm room would put like a picture of themselves, some information. So we had gone around to each of the dorm rooms. It just so happened while we were looking at hers, she walked out.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, hello.
It was kind of like a Tinder back then. You just see these profiles on the doors.
Okay.
So I guess your swipe left, right is
Yeah,
like, you
that's
move
funny.
on or you don't. I don't know. And then,
Well, however,
okay, and then soon after
you haven't even
that,
gotten to the part of the story that I like.
okay, soon after that, then my friends and I were gonna go to the movie. They had like a $1 movie theater. And so we were like, okay, that's cool. And I was like, well, maybe we should invite like Scott and his friends. That'd
Yeah,
be
you're
kinda fun.
totally skipping over everything.
What's the other stuff?
How you behind the scenes went and talked to my roommate to find out whether you would ever have any possibility with me, or
I just went and talked to him and like, hey, so who is this guy? And like, does he have a
Okay.
girlfriend? And he had just broken up with his girlfriend, bad boy. Like, anyway, that's a long story. But
well, yeah, don't just say that.
Mr. Rico,
So it was actually something bad, because I had a girlfriend in high school, but I don't know. It wasn't a compatible thing, but I just had it in my whole freshman year of college because I had a girlfriend. It was just like, it just took that out of the picture, because then I didn't have to think about anything like that, and everybody knew I had a girlfriend, so whatever. But this is what I did, and I sort of regret it, but I also think it was God's plan, but I do regret what I did. because when she was getting ready to go to school, she decided to move 6 hours away from home to go to the same school I went. But then when she got there, I realized, like, I don't want this. And so within like the first week of her arrival on campus, I just went and broke up with her. So she had literally moved to Spokane, Washington,
Yeah, that
and
one's
chose a school based on me. And
Yep.
as soon as she got there,
Yeah.
Not the best.
Yeah,
now
that's a
it's
bit
not
rough.
the finest hour of my life.
No, not a good move.
But I guess I look at it as God had a plan. God had a plan for her. She ended up meeting her husband there. God had a plan for us because then I was single.
Yeah, there you go. I'd like to fast forward to, since the topic's marriage. So if you were to make a list of what you liked or what convinced you to marry each other, what's that list? What would be on that list? At the time, not now, at the time.
At the time, so since my world had been flipped upside down, and then I was like, oh my goodness, like I really want to like follow Jesus. I want to do all these, like live a Christian life. And then that was about the time we had met. And then we actually, I would say like the reason why I think that our foundation was so strong because we would stay up all hours of the night, not doing anything but just talking, like about life stuff, what was most important to us, talking about the Bible. And then he said, I will never, you said you weren't going to kiss anyone. No, yes, until they read the whole Bible together. And then, oh no, Mary. Was it Mary? Or
Yeah, I wasn't going to marry
Okay,
anyone.
Mary. Okay. We must have kissed before that. Anyway, that was 30 years ago. So then we started reading the Bible together, and then we talk about it. And like, we would be up in our little like dorm, the little communal area, and just like talking like so much. And so I felt like we really like had a strong foundation because we talk so much before we really got into the other aspects of a relationship. And then with reading the Bible together, and then like that was all pretty fresh to me. And I think that, so the fact that he had such strong convictions about things, I was like, that is not normal. Like, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that he had very like, I'm not doing this until I do this. Like, and I was like, okay, I can get behind that. I like that. So he was a very like strong-minded. But then the other thing,
I was just smiling because I'm thinking to myself, like, after telling the story about my other girlfriend and dropping her, I sound like a horrible person. But actually, a big part of it was I definitely was a very committed Christian young man. I was really passionate about my faith.
Yes. And so that was definitely, for me, I was like, wow, that's pretty incredible. And then the other thing is I'm a pretty adventurous person. I like to travel. I'm a little more spontaneous sometimes. And so he would be like, let's do this. Let's go here. And I was like, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And then like in the middle.
That goes back to you calling me a wild man.
Yeah. So I like that he was very strong. He was very strong about his beliefs and who he was, but he was also not afraid to try new things.
Okay.
So.
How about yourself?
Oh, well, there are lots of things I liked about Andrea.
Top two.
So probably one of the things that stands out from like, especially when we first met, was she was funny and would laugh a lot. In fact, most days she wouldn't be able to fall asleep until she just like wore herself out laughing, which was something I really liked about her. Always laughing.
Is that like joy?
Yeah, I like that.
Just okay.
And I don't know, to go back to the story that Andrew was telling, when I was in high school, there was a Christian conference I went to called Jesus Northwest, and it was like a big youth conference that was held at a fairground outside of Portland, Oregon. And there must have been tens of thousands of Christian kids who had come to this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that during one of the main sessions, there was a speaker who kind of challenged all the high schoolers who were there. And he basically said, commit to this, which is before you marry anyone, read the Bible from cover to cover with them. I don't know if in this stadium of 10,000 people there was another kid who decided to do it, but I was like, okay, that's it. Like, I am not even going to consider marrying anybody unless they share a passion about my faith, and I want to read the entire Bible from cover to cover with them. And so that's what I committed myself to. So when we first started dating, and I think with any girl that I would date, this would have been in my mind. Like, what is this person's faith like? How are we going to fit together? I was an engineering student at the time when we met, so I wasn't really thinking about like ministry. I was just a very committed Christian. But that would be the thing in my mind. Like, okay, do they love God? How is their faith? If I propose, let's read the Bible together, is this something that they like or they won't like? And Andrea liked it.
Okay.
And by the time we finished the Old Testament, I was pretty sure we had a match.
That's good. Yeah, you make it through Leviticus and Numbers, and you're like, okay, we're on our way.
No, but we did. And it's not like we just only sat around reading the Bible, but we would every day read the Bible together.
Yeah.
And I think by the time we had read the entire Bible together, it had also given us the occasion to just about talk about every possible issue two people might talk about.
Okay.
Because, man, what about this in life? Or what do you think about that? Or,
Yeah.
I don't know. So I just think that that also stood out to me. I think, I don't know. Marriage is funny. That's what I have to say about it. I guess everybody has their issues. That's what I have to say.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, I mean a whole lot of things by that, because we all have our issues. But it's interesting to me because I do think like there was enough similarities between our families. That helped a lot. I mean, there's ways that I am and there's ways that I'm not, but I think there's like a significant overlap between her dad and me, which I don't know. Why do you want to marry your dad?
Yeah.
Not like that, but
like
to some
familiar.
extent, there's a significant overlap between our personalities,
Yeah.
They're very strong,
which
leader
is good
types.
because I think it made us very compatible. I don't know. I think we're both very unique persons. I don't know if I could be married to too many people in this world,
Yeah.
or if they could be married to me is the other way around. But I think Andrea truly understands me and gets where I'm coming from. And I feel, I mean, it's not like we agree about everything, but I also feel like I truly understand her and get where she's coming from
So
most of the time.
you guys both mentioned something, and it's the conviction in your faith, that component prior to marriage. What's your take on how Christian should someone be, or how convinced of Jesus, or how much of a strong believer should they be?
What do you mean?
If one person is a strong Christian and another person isn't, is that wise? Is that a good match? Should they both be strong Christians? Should they both be like equally? Like, what's your take on the level of faith in a relationship before marriage?
Sharing faith is important.
Okay.
But I don't know. Your question is a tough one because I think when it comes right down to it, you're going to have to find compatibility with the person, but it's not like you're going to agree about everything. There's some stuff, I mean, I don't know. I think we spend a significant amount of time disagreeing about things too.
Okay.
Any two people are going to disagree about a whole lot. But I feel like there's some issues that are so fundamental that if you disagree about those things, how do you move forward? And I think faith is probably one of those. And there's others too. I mean, suppose one person wants to have a bunch of kids and the other person's like, I don't want kids at all. Well, that is like an issue so fundamental.
Yeah.
You can say, oh, it won't matter. It'll matter.
Yeah. There's a priority list of things to disagree
And I
agree
think
on.
faith is the same thing. You say, oh, this won't matter. We'll figure it out. No, it'll matter.
Yeah.
It's going to matter.
Well, when you're in that puppy dog stage, nothing
Yeah.
matters, right?
Overlook it.
Well,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
overlook a lot of things, but I think most people would be wise to slow down and make sure that at least on the fundamental areas of life, and this could be a lot of things. Faith is probably the foundation of it, but there's a whole bunch of other areas of compatibility. You should at least figure out how you're going to navigate that if you realize you're not compatible in those areas.
Yeah.
I mean, money would be another one, the way you view money. I feel like when we first married, we had very, very different views of money. And good news for Andrea is I changed.
Lighten up a little bit.
Well, I just had a very bad relationship with money until I started learning to tithe.
Spend. He
Yeah.
stress out over little 10
Pennies.
cents, and I was like,
He told us about your library story, the library book story.
yes. Well, and then anyway, yes. I think my advice for kids who are dating is the number one thing is, do they love the Lord? Like, you got to start there. If they don't, then
Is it a waste of time?
maybe the Lord's going to bring that person around, but you shouldn't put your heart on the line, because when you date, you put your heart on the line.
Okay.
And like, you're kind of gambling, like, oh, will they not, and you're praying that they will, and then you fall in love, and then, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you have to start with that foundation.
Would you say it's a
First.
waste of time? Would you say, like, just don't even bother?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Hot take. That's good. How about yourself?
I don't know. This is what I think too, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I feel like it's weird. Like, if I just think about myself, there's only been one Scott since the time I was born till now. I've always been me. But I think Andrew's probably been married to like 3 or 4 different men by now.
What?
What I mean by that is we all change. I think I've changed. Like,
Well, yeah.
I'm not the same guy you first met. I am, but I'm also not.
Your inner core is still the same, but you, like, as you go through life and you go through experiences and trauma, and it changes.
Yeah, I just
kids,
feel like
it all changes
people change extremely also. Well, maybe. I feel like I've gone through extreme changes.
So Andrea says that
Andrea,
your
you've
inner
been
your
through extreme
core
changes.
is the
Core
same.
is still the same. A lot of conviction, headstrong, like, very, like, decisive, more of a, not a black and white thinker, but you still care and you still, like, love, but, like, very headstrong, which is good in my, like, I appreciate that. Because as you know, Andrea can be all over the place. And so it's good to have, like, very, like, strong to his core and his foundation of his faith and who he is. And yeah.
That's
You
another
never
thing I like about you too,
waver.
is you're a strong person also.
Sometimes.
Like, if you, I think life would be, it'd be too boring for me if you were like a pushover.
Has there
Like, I don't know. That's what I'm thinking to myself. Like, I think of all the people that I know, you also are a strong person. You're a leader. You're a person of conviction as well. And it's not just, I don't know. It's not just like you, I don't know what I was going to say. You're not like a pushover kind of person.
has there ever been a moment where one of you has been spiritually strong and the other one was struggling? And how did that affect your dynamic?
don't know. Maybe. I think actually there are times in marriage where one of us is strong and the other is weaker, where someone's suffering more, the other person, I don't know.
I don't
It's hard
know,
to say.
Spiritually, maybe more emotionally.
Okay.
Just, yeah, I don't
think
know.
Spiritually, that's
You're
I
going
don't
through something
see
or I'm
us-
going through something. I don't know.
Yeah, more emotionally. Like maybe he's struggling with something, and then I have to be stronger and like it's okay, it's gonna be fine, you know. And then, or I'm going through something, and then he's like, "Hey, babe, remember, like promises, and you know."
How long have you guys been married?
It'll be 28 years.
28.
and a few
Next
more
week.
days.
Next
17.
week, the anniversary is here. The anniversary
Big
should have been.
anniversary.
Yeah, past. Okay.
Actually, what's the date today?
Age.
So it's going to, yeah.
It'll be
All right.
next
When this
Saturday.
comes out, we'll be 2 days away from our anniversary.
All right. That's great. Are there any, we're in the time of rise at our church, and this is the invest quarter where we're investing in spiritual disciplines. Are there any spiritual disciplines that you could recommend that you've experienced to other married couples that would strengthen their marriage? I think you mentioned one, which is reading the Bible together. You did that prior to marriage. Are there any
But I
others?
think, I don't know. I feel, this is sort of funny to say, but I feel like both of us have had an approach to raising our kids too, where we're trying to impart faith to our kids. And we've been intentional about that, not passive, but active. I'm not sure if that answers the question a lot.
Wisdom. But when we were, it was maybe year 1 or 2 of our marriage, I got this book and I was like, oh, it's called like Night Lights. And like you read these, remember that? Those little devotionals we read at night?
Oh,
Anyway, we
yeah.
did that for a year. That was, you don't remember that? I thought it was such a good idea.
Okay.
And so, honestly, I think that as far as spiritual disciplines go, I think we probably do more of our spiritual disciplines on our own, but we talk about faith more as like a family unit, like encouraging the girls in their faith and trying to impart some wisdom to them and things like that.
So, like raising the girls together is like an act of faith that you're working out. Like, is that a discipline?
Sure.
Okay.
100%.
So you mentioned something. You said you're intentional about it. You're active about instilling faith in your girls and not
Yes.
passive.
That's the thing I probably care about the most.
Okay. So
Like
let's
I could care less whether they become a doctor or a teacher or a lawyer or whatever.
yeah.
But the one thing I want to make sure is that they have faith,
Okay. Let's
that
talk.
they know Jesus.
So do
Because I don't know how you navigate life without it.
So do you think how does one play an active role in leading faith, and what does it look like to be passive?
You should probably do a podcast where you have our kids come on.
I should. This sounds great. This sounds like a great Marissa, Rach, Kate.
Yeah, they probably all say something a little different.
I think passive is, well, our girls also grew up in the church. And so, like, just church and Jesus and everything has been like a huge, like,
Well, I
part of
actually
their
think this is
lives. So I
awesome.
guess that's more
I wish
passive.
I wish every kid could have what our kids have had. And I think they can, but parents probably just have to commit to it. I sort of had this when I was growing up. My parents were very committed to our church, and we spent a lot of time at our church. And
Not that that's going to save you. And
no,
not that
but I
that's-
wish every kid would have the opportunity to spend a lot of time at church. I think there's lots of things you can do with your kids, but actually having them, like, I think that's one of the best things that's happened to our kids is they've always been here, like always. Like sometimes they might not even want to come. It's too bad you're coming.
So you force them.
Force them?
Yeah.
Oh, they don't have a choice. Well, they do. Actually, they would choose
But
to
they
be here.
love it. Yeah,
They would choose to be here.
yeah.
I mean, it's just like whatever. I mean, there'll be plenty of times where we just come over as a family. We have to set up chairs, and they don't want to come and set up chairs. But oh well, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Come set up these chairs.
But you'd admit that it's a little easier for you as a pastor and the pastor of the church.
Well, it's our lifestyle. It's a big part of our life ministry.
Yeah.
So we've made it that way. But actually, my parents, they weren't in ministry in any way, but they did something which I appreciate, which is they had us around the church all the time. My brothers and I would have to go clean the church. I remember our church had to be painted. It was like the three of us, we were teenagers, go paint the church.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were always doing things that, our church had a morning service and an evening service. There was never a time we weren't at both. We didn't always want to go, like we were playing with our friends out on a Sunday afternoon. It's 4:00. My parents were like, all right, we're going to church. We're like, come on, do we have to?
Right.
But yes, you have to.
Do you think that it's a little, like the trajectory or the trend of parenting now is, I think it's obviously not that forceful, right? Let my kid decide. I don't want to force it down their, down their throats. Like, I don't want to make them a Christian. I'll hopefully God will bring them towards it. What do you think about that approach towards raising kids in faith?
I would say, I think we have to separate out Sunday morning stuff from Monday through Saturday stuff.
Okay.
Sunday morning, it seems like a lot of parents are like, well, my kid didn't want to get out of bed today. To me, I always say, I don't care where they go in Sunday morning, but I really think it's important that the whole family goes to church. It needs to be first, super important. But I think just having kids integrated in the life of the church, coming in, running around with their friends on this night, and the church is open and they can go and have those, when there's a service project, getting involved with your family and having the kids be a part of it. And I think that has been such a big role in my kids' lives, is that they would come to church and then there was people who would ask them, oh, how are you? How's this? How's that? And they felt like they were in the body of Christ, that this was their second family. This was their second home for so many years. And then they had a second family of grandmas and Jake and Aaron and people who would joke around and they'd have a good time, and they really loved it a lot. And so it was never oh, we have to go and do this. They're oh, cool, Jake's gonna be there fun, you know. So I think that's such a big part of it, is the church body and the church family, and they really feel like this is their family.
Yeah.
And
Which
people
is
care
really
about
sweet.
them, which is great.
They do.
And
They
I
do a
think
lot.
actually our church is really good about that. There's lots of kids here who wind up having relationships with other adults. And
Yeah.
So when we first moved here, it was Peter and Fran.
Yep.
And so I didn't know anyone. We moved here, Marissa was 4 months old.
Yeah.
I didn't know a single person. It was Peter and Fran who we first met. And I have such sweet memories when, Marissa, especially when she was little, and there was no children's ministries. So when I got here, I was a teacher, and I was like, okay, I have time on my hands, I'll help. And Karen and I are working on stuff. And I'd bring Marissa, and she'd be toddling all over the place. And then Peter would he'd put her on the
hand truck.
that
Red
hand
dolly.
truck
Yeah.
thing, and start wheeling her around. And she thought that was the best thing ever. It was so adorable. And my kids have such good memories of the church and people at the church, because the church is people. And so it really helped form them to now my kids willingly choose to go. We don't force them.
Well, and maybe you're getting at the real issue, which is, it's not bring them to a building. I think the best thing you can do for your kids is help get them around a Christian community. I think everybody realizes you're going to sort of become the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah. So the spiritual discipline, back to the sharper question, as a parent, one of the best things you could do for your kids is community, establish them in a community.
100%. I would say one of the best things you can do for yourself and anyone else is really get yourself into community.
Well, I got to sacrifice, trips on the weekend. I got to sacrifice travel ball, whatever that is. I got to sacrifice
Yeah.
getting up out of my bed, throughout the week. Some of this stuff can be hard. And people have, double jobs and, all this kind of stuff.
Tired.
Life isn't necessarily easy about it, but if you let all that other stuff crowd out the most important stuff, it's sort of like, you remember, I don't remember who first came out with this. Is it in that 7 Habits of Highly Successful People or whatever, where you have like a jar and you have rocks and pebbles and sand and water.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've put the sand and the water in first, you're never going to get the large
Big
rocks in.
Yep.
So you got to get the large rocks in first, and then then you do the pebbles, then you do the sand, then you do the water, which tells you got to do the most important things, prioritize that, and put it.
Yeah.
Did I say that well enough?
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
okay.
the point is, at least I think our philosophy has been, when it comes to what is the rocks of our family, our faith, and being part of a Christian community, those are like non-negotiable rocks that got to go in the jar first. And other things, it's not like we're not involved in other things. We have lots of other hobbies, activities, or whatever.
Yeah.
But those have got to be the water and the sand, or whatever. Is that the right way to put it?
This might be redundant, but what would you say to a parent who is struggling with, they've lived their life a certain way already? Like, we're going to do travel ball. We're going to go the trips on the weekend. When I make it to church, will be once a month, maybe twice a month, and that's a regular attending a church. And then maybe if they make it to youth group, if they want to, what would you say to that parent who is maybe double tired, doesn't see the family on the weekend, and has like real life excuses? Excuses probably too dismissive of a word, but really life challenges for getting their family to church as often as you're saying might be good for them. What's the rebuttal?
I want to say something, which is, I don't think Andrea and I are very judgmental people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that we're the kind of people who, just as our basis of philosophy of like, the way we did things is better than the way you do things, or so. To a certain extent, I don't know that we'd be the kind of people to like compare one way that people do it versus others.
Okay.
I think we both have enough humility to realize like we're far from like the perfect parents, or we're far from having the perfect family or the perfect marriage. But we do have our philosophy, or the way that we've kind of conducted ourselves. And I would say that now that our kids are getting older, Marissa's married, Rachel's moving out, I'm happy that we have these principles or this philosophy, which sometimes, I mean, our 2 older girls really got involved with tennis, and they both really got good at tennis. And so as an example, they'd have tournaments over the weekend, some of which would need to happen on a Sunday. And we wound up sort of really wrestling around with this, like, man, what do we do here? Because, there's this conflict between sports and the way that, just the way that things are done kind of in our culture versus our own commitments. And I wouldn't say that we landed on some kind of perfect balance of that or anything like that. I do think we just wrestled around with what was the most important. And for us, keeping our kids connected to a faith church community was more important than having them be connected to like the tennis community. And so, it's not like they were disconnected from tennis. Lots of tennis. There was lots of things going on. But I even though they're really good at tennis, it's now obvious they're not turning pro.
Well, yeah, that's, I was going to say, we went through a season, and also Kate was riding horses, and her shows were always on Sundays. And so it just got to the point where it was like, I felt like I was the one who'd be taking them. That was where I was leading her. And then you do feel that disconnect, that like, I don't really feel like I'm a part of my church because I don't see them as much. And I felt it with the kids too. So we just decided long term, the major rock in their life is faith. And
Yeah.
that was the most important thing. And so that's where, when you have guiding principles and you have strong values, and, if faith is guiding you, then you follow that and then you make your decisions in life based on that.
Yeah. I'd like to shift the conversation to motherhood. What you would say has been one of the most challenging seasons of motherhood? Like, and how can you prepare a young mother for that?
To be completely honest, I think every season has its own challenges.
Sure.
I think when your kids are little can be one of the more challenging stages, just because you never really catch a break. You're always on.
Any particular like experience that you have? Like, give me a story or like an experience, or give me some meat to this philosophical thought.
I don't know. I think after we had our third child, and then Kate was a baby. So we had a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and like a 2-month-old. And he was being called away to a lot of conferences and stuff. And he had to go up to Grand Rapids for stuff. And like, I got to the point where I was just like, what in the world? This is really hard. Like, single mom in it. And I was like, put my foot down, and I was like, no more conferences. Like, I don't care who wants you. Like, you're not going. So that was a very, to me, kind of a tough stage right there, when I would say our third was a baby. But it was also full of a ton of joy and fun, and just a lot of really good things. So I would say that was probably one of the more difficult stages. And then I think the teen years are really, really great. I love it because you have awesome conversations. And like, we love to go, my kids love to go for walks, and we do a lot of like, let's go get this, let's go get ice cream, or, let's go for a walk together. And for the most part, they're game, they'll go.
Yeah.
And so it's a really, really fun season, but it can be a challenging season just because there's a lot of wisdom that they are learning. And so as they are learning and you're trying to guide them, and sometimes as your parents are trying to impart wisdom, they don't always want to hear it. And so it is also trusting that God's got them and their story and their life figured out, and we're part of helping to guide them. So I love the teen years. They're really fun, but it can be a little stressful sometimes.
You mentioned I had to put my foot down. No more conferences. Did he oblige? How did that conversation go? Was it still tough?
I think, I don't know, just to kind of reflect on everything, there's like two ways I would think about it. One is definitely because I've become a pastor, there's, along with that, there's some aspects of what I do where I think if Andrea wasn't accepting of it, and this goes back to like how she grew up, if she wanted me, as an example, to just have like a 9-to-5 job, like my hours were just confined to 9 to 5, like our marriage would be full of turmoil, because that's not how it is.
Yeah.
Just the other day, I mean, it's 2:00 in the morning, we're waking up to go to the hospital.
Right.
We kind of, I think, together have like accepted the parameters of that lifestyle. But one of the aspects of sort of church life is there's always way more to do than can be done. And I think probably I've struggled to figure out, where are the boundaries around that to be available enough to my family all the time. I don't know, like what Andrew would say. I think there's probably been seasons where I pushed it a little too hard. And then the good thing about being in ministry is I think I've also been very present with my family compared to most fathers too. I think my girls would say that. I think
Tennis matches.
I've been able,
life.
I mean, it's not like I haven't
Trips.
prioritized my family, but you go through seasons in ministry. I think this is just like, this too. You know, there's some seasons where things are just like you're running from morning to night and you don't get a breather, you don't get a break.
Yeah, that was April.
It's interesting now because Andrea has become really engaged in children's ministry, and I would say that between the two of us, she works longer hours than I do.
Yeah.
And sometimes now, like the shoe's on the other foot because I'm like, hey, call it.
Stop working. Gotcha.
But I think it's just like seasons, and I don't know.
Okay.
It's true. I'm just as guilty. It just was in that season when they
Yeah.
were so little. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
But I guess what I would just say about it is that we've been able to accept, I don't know, accept the life that God gave us, or
Yep.
yeah, I would say like probably I've seen this in so many marriages just because of my position. I get to hear a lot of stories, and I just know like someone marries someone who travels for work, and then they cannot accept that this person's gone. Or someone, I don't know, they cannot accept the parameters of what their life is, and that becomes a trouble. And I think we've been able to be accepting of each other, or be accepting of our life, or I don't know what I mean by that. Maybe you
but
do.
I do feel, to go back to the question, when there are times I will put my foot down
Yeah.
and I'll put my feet in the sand. I'll be like, no. And then there's times, and for the most part, like, but I also listen. He has way more wisdom than me, way more. So if there's times where I do that, where I dig my feet in, and he's like, honey, this is wrong. And I'm like, oh, oops.
He picks you up.
Yeah, and it's not like an
Get your
immediate,
feet out of
it's
there.
like a, hey,
Yeah.
you know. And then that, but there's times he'll dig in and he'll be like, no, this is the way it is. And I know, because I trust his convictions and his faith and who he is as a person, I know he's making that decision for the best of everyone. It's like how God, like, he works everything out for the good of those who love him. Same thing. Like, I know he's making those decisions because he loves us and he cares for us and he wants the best for us.
Yeah.
So whatever that is. And so another reason why I love him is I can trust his discernment and wisdom, you know, for the most part.
For the
I'm just over here smiling.
95% of the time.
That's funny.
Well, I don't know. I guess I sort of think about it that way. One of the surprises in my life, because I grew up with only brothers, is that I have a house full of women. That's one of the surprises of my life.
funny.
And I've had to sort of develop a philosophy or approach to how to handle all the femininity. And I think what I've tried to do for the most part, and I'm pretty sure everyone would agree with this about our household, is I try to keep things fun. I try to keep it light. And I also feel the responsibility of keeping everyone talking. Like, for sure, like, I'm the one who's always like getting in there and keeping the conversation going. And I think everyone would say that I'm at least trying to bring the fun factor.
Okay.
And then when the girls get annoyed, they don't want to talk about something. And then he's like,
Yeah, then I'll talk about it harder.
and then he'll
More.
make jokes. And
They're like, we don't want to talk about this. I'm like, okay, we're going deeper. Let's go deep.
Okay. So I feel like we've spent some time exploring very sound Christian wisdom in marriage and parenting, at least experience. I did want to take this opportunity to bring up other types of wisdom. Jake, if you could pull up that list of reference links and videos and cue up the Who's First video. This is
While he's doing that, could I say something? Because I feel like we're passing by something, and I should say one thing at least.
yes.
Which is since it's Mother's Day and this is a Mother's Day episode, it's kind of hard to overstate how important moms are.
All right.
Like, there's no way our entire household could function and we would really, like, all of us be in a world of hurt except for Andrea. And
Translate that to the other houses that.
well, what I'm just saying is
moms
like
are-
I do recognize, like, especially what you were just saying, like when the kids were young, it was difficult. Like everyone's demanding something of Andrea and there's nothing left of her, and it's like you're just pressing so hard to just exist. And I feel like mothers give themselves away. I mean, most mothers just give themselves away completely to the point where it's like to a detriment of themselves. And I've seen that Andrea's done that.
What's like one of the bigger ways that you've seen that?
Oh, there's lots of ways that I see it.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, go back to what she was saying, like when the kids were little, I mean, these kids demanded so much from her. So much. And then I was demanding stuff from her, and like as a husband. And I just think like it's hard to overstate. You know, like most mothers probably, yeah, we have Mother's Day, but they probably don't realize on a day-to-day basis, like, it's not glamorous.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if the kids are sick, usually Andrea gets up and tends to them, and I'm like, oh, they're fine. I mean, that's really our dynamic. It's like they'll live, and then she's, you know, the one who's, you know, really doting on them. And I just think most mothers, they have kind of, I don't know if you call it the motherly instinct or whatever it is that God gives mothers, the love of a mother or whatever, but I think most probably feel really underappreciated and like, hey, is what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis even worth it? And moms get so stressed out. And I think especially like, man, single motherhood, like there's mothers out there who are having to do it all by themselves. And then I just think about like these single mothers who are also dealing with, I don't know, all the problems of broken relationships. And I don't know. What I would say is it's unbelievable, and probably no one can say how important motherhood is. And I just, you know, I sit and think about what Andrea's done for our house and for our kids. It's, you know, I'm reflecting on that. And you're asking about Mother's Day, and I just didn't want to not say,
Yeah.
man, this is super important.
Yeah, I think time to recognize. So Kelsey, who is like super mom to me, is like, not to me, but in my eyes, right, to the kids. She mentions this podcast, the Risen Motherhood podcast,
Okay.
which is a really great podcast. I think they're ending soon, but I'm sure their episodes will be up. However, she mentioned something a while ago that I thought was really reflective. It was that you said that it's like not glamorous. You're like folding laundry, wiping poop, cooking, washing the dishes, all these like little non-glamorous things. And she said something to this effect where there's a million tiny moments in the day where as you're folding laundry, you could still worship God. You could still draw close to God. Like that in itself, like this act of sacrifice is something that is similar to worship. Like if a kid's crying in 2:00 in the morning and you're like delirious trying to rock this kid to sleep or whatever, like that is an opportunity where no one recognizes it but God. And it's a show of, not show, but it's like an act of worship for a mom who might be struggling in all these things. Do you have any reflections on?
I read a book back in those days. It was a Max Lucado book. I have to think about what the name was, but it was basically about very similar, like finding God in the ordinary, and all that you do is like an act of worship and service,
Yeah.
and like in the little ordinary parts of life, and how, you know, motherhood and parenthood, it's so sacrificial.
Yeah.
Like you're the last one to eat.
Yeah.
You go spend your money on your kids and not yourself.
Yeah.
You sacrifice your time. You're driving them all over the place. Like it really is a sacrificial love. And sometimes it doesn't feel, you can feel like people don't understand how sacrificial it really is.
Right.
But I think when you do it in the lens of motherhood is our highest calling, as you know, if we have kids, like that's your number one ministry is a mom. Like your family is your number one ministry, hands down. But it's sacrifice. But when you think about that in the terms of like, wow, I'm so grateful that Jesus has allowed me the opportunity to do this. He sacrificed so that
Yeah.
I can now be that to my kids.
Yeah.
I can be that to my friends. I can, you know?
Yeah.
So when I think about like, wow, like I said, my whole life was turned upside down. You understand that sacrifice. And then it's like an act of service. And it's not service out of, I got to do this. It's like, it's an act of service out of love.
Yeah. Yeah.
You love that little person so much. And that's how Jesus is. He loves us so much. He sacrificed. God sacrificed himself. And so we are doing the same thing on a daily basis as we're changing diapers and cooking dinner and, you know, all those things.
I want to transition. Yeah, I think this theme of self-sacrifice really cues up this video beautifully. But before we get to the video, I just want to take a moment to recognize this cool new cup, Disciple Standard Podcast Cup, brought to you by Sherry Youngblood, a viewer of the episode or the podcast. So thank you so much, Jake's mom. And so, yeah, I really want to. She's the CrafterParty. Links in the description. It's an amazing cup. So thank you. It's really showing me out. I want to touch on this theme of self-sacrifice. It's not really a popular or common mentality going into marriage. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm not sure. But there's this video that I found on another podcast where a lady named Candace Owens is talking to another lady about the dynamics in marriage. And I'd want to get your reaction to this. I'm not sure if this is popular or not, but this is definitely something that's interesting. So let's go ahead and take a look at the video.
But if you were married,
if I was married, I still want to put my husband first.
Damn!
It's my
Wait a
life.
minute, hold on.
Whoa, hold on a second.
that could be why he doesn't want to get married, right? If you're saying, like, even if we get married, I'm putting myself first and I'm not putting you first. If I was a dude and I heard that, like, I would definitely say, okay, then
But
I'm
it's
not going to
also
marry
about
you.
coming together. You know what I'm saying? It's also about a union. And I'm saying, what I'm saying is there's a lot of people, I'm sorry, there's a lot of people nowadays that doesn't understand what a union is.
Well, if you,
And-
but I would argue potentially that you're that person because you just said if we got married, I would still put me first. That's
would he
not
put
a
me
union.
first, though? Would a man put his wife first?
Yes.
So you should always
Yes.
put,
Yes.
what I'm saying is
Yes.
I feel like you should always put yourself first, you know what I'm saying? But when it comes to a guy, you shouldn't put a guy over yourself. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so I would offer that in a very productive marriage, there is no I versus, it's just we. Like I am in a partnership, a team, me and my husband. The concept of putting me first, even saying that just sounds so crazy to me in a marriage. Like I've never thought it once. It's just, it's us, it's the kids, it's our family. Like I becomes we.
All right. So you see like a snippet. There's a larger conversation, but essentially it's like, what's your take on women who enter marriage or men who enter marriage and it's like, I'm going to put me first versus I'm going to think about the unit, what you were talking about with Scott?
So, all right, it's always, we are human beings that are little sinners, and like we tend like it's all about me. It's what I want, what I'm going to get out of this. And like, you're not meeting my needs and you're not doing these things to meet my needs and what I need. And as soon as you start doing that, that's kind of where the marriage starts to fall apart. Because if he looks out for the best for me, and I'm always looking out the best for him, and I'm always thinking about how does this affect him, he's saying how does this affect Andrea, it works really well. But if it's all about me, it's not going to work.
Yeah. how would you combat that if like one person was all about me? Like, if combat is probably not the best word, right? We all kind of fall into this like, I need something. I need what I need.
I think we're combating this every day.
Okay.
I think, unfortunately, because of our fallen nature, we tend to be pretty self-interested and self-referential. I think that, I don't know, if I was to say, like, when we first got married, one of the things that really ended up bothering me was that I just didn't realize how selfish I was. And it really, like, I was like, wow, I'm a really selfish person. I think I make a horrible husband. And I'm pretty sure Andrew would agree at many points that I mean, I was. So I actually I really thought about it. And I definitely went through some amount of change, because after I got married, I did realize how selfish I was. And then we started having kids. And that was the thing that surprised me the most about myself. Again, I was like, man, I just can't believe how selfish I am. And I wouldn't have known that except I was getting feedback, you know, and I do believe we provide each other feedback in our marriage.
Good.
And I just, probably this is the case that like everybody, I mean, this is the problem for everybody. It's not just married couples. It's like everybody in general. Like, we probably just don't realize how selfish and self-oriented we are. I think as sort of like a mental exercise, we all realize the world would be a better place if we all cared about each other more than we cared about ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to do. And it's one of the reasons why I love the gospel so much, because I think apart from me really rehearsing the gospel every single day to remind myself that I am a sinner, that I am inclined toward selfishness and self-centeredness, but this is what Jesus did. He laid his life down.
Yeah.
And I think if I don't really remember the gospel, probably all of us tend toward destructive selfishness.
Yeah.
Where we destroy the people around us.
I think also we destroy the people around us, but if we're self-aware enough to know that we're like, this is what I want and I'm not compromising, there might be a tend to like not see the need of marriage. This has been I think this is a cultural norm right now, or a trend at least, where people are shying away from marriage. People aren't getting married as often, or they're getting married later, or so on. I have another video, last one for the day, and then we'll kind of call it here. Marriage is an L on that list. And in this video, it talks about a guy who he describes marriage as an L and why, and I'd want to take your feedback on it. So let's start the video.
Marriage is an L. So my thing is, you never sign a contract with someone who is rewarded for breaking it. And women in today's day and age, if the guy's the breadwinner, they are rewarded by breaking the marriage contract. See, if you look at the vows of marriage, what do they say? They say, till death do us part. That has to mean something in today's day and age. But it ain't the case. If I do marry a girl, it has to be till death do us part. There is no divorce. So like, to me, like, I'd have to be so certain, but your words have to mean something. Till death do us part has to mean something. And frankly, in today's day and age, it doesn't.
So,
Amen.
yeah, what's the take?
I think that's why you have to start your dating journey early on. You are making a choice based on faith and based on core values, because if people don't understand and really get the sacrifice of Jesus, they're not going to truly understand how to sacrifice for the other person. They might try. That might be a little, I don't know, some people might find that controversial, but I think when you are dating and then you eventually go into marriage, it is till death do you part, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's it.
But he's saying that people don't believe that anymore. So people,
I agree. They
So
don't.
and so he's saying marriage is an L. Like, it's like you shouldn't get married. That's at least his.
Right. So he's taking like that's kind of the worldly like don't even do it. Like
Yeah.
so basically it's like sleep around non-committal.
I think
Why
that's
would
his
you
take.
want to sign a contract where you're just going to lose anyway?
Right.
Because you're probably going to have divorce and you're yeah. So yeah, that's very faulty and it's very people who I think people who go down that road also end up very lonely, very sad. So not everyone, the Bible actually says it's better to stay single than to get married.
Fair enough.
So if you are able to stay single and really focus on the Lord, like, great, do it. But, you know, for the majority of people, he's called them to be married. But you don't enter into marriage going, well, let's do a prenup just in case.
Yeah.
No, you are entering into a sacred contract, so to say, that is not meant to be broken.
Okay. Scott?
I'm a little harder on it than you are.
What do you mean?
Probably. I don't know.
I don't think I think we 100% agree about that. Like, I guess what I'm just sitting here thinking about is, I think love is a risk.
Yeah.
So either with regard to love, you just wall your heart off and say to myself, okay, I'll never allow my heart to love, which I think maybe there'll be reasons that some people will do that, but I don't think it's a very satisfying way to live. I think love, even friendship love, is a risk. But because people can stab you in the back and it can be very painful. But I think when you are married to someone and you have that kind of a close relationship, I believe that the wedding contract is like the most important thing. Like people today say, oh, it's just a piece of paper. Man, not to me. There's no way, like in marriage, you're just fully exposed to the other person. What I mean by that is no one can hurt me more than Andrea could hurt me. Now, I have close friends who could hurt me, but no one could hurt me the way that Andrea could hurt me. And the reverse is also true. No one could hurt Andrea the way I could hurt her. So you kind of have to have a marriage covenant where you're like, you know what? Before God and before others, like, yeah, if this goes south and things get worse, if there's sickness, if we wind up in poverty, it doesn't matter. I'm going to stick with you no matter what. Like, there's no way we could ever be comfortable in our marriage with each other unless we knew that about each other. And I truly do believe that Andrea is not going to, wake up one morning and decide to leave me. And I'm certain that Andrea feels the same way about me. If we felt shaky about it, it would make for a very difficult life. But it's a risk.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of people who they took that risk with someone who wasn't worthy of entering into that kind of a risk with, and they suffer the consequences of having the person who was closest to them be the person who hurt them the most.
I like to talk about that.
I was going to say I feel so strongly about marriage and stuff. However, abusive relationships are something that I actually draw. I'm like, I don't want a woman or a man to be in danger and to be like, oh, I have to stick with this person. I think marriages need checkups. I think they need counseling. I think there needs to be a lot of help. And I think that first and foremost, those things need to be put in place. But I would never want someone to think like, oh, I have to stick with this person, even if it means I'm abused every day and mistreated. Like, and I mean like mistreated, like, like
Physically.
that's, yeah.
Well, I guess I didn't go totally to the abuse route. I think I would agree with you. Like, hey, if you're physically abusive, get out of there for your safety. I'm more thinking about someone who took the risk, or some like an unequally yoked marriage in faith. We'll end here, but I'm curious, what is your advice to somebody who is in a marriage and they have faith and the other person doesn't?
Well, it can happen one of two ways. One is that they enter into marriage that way, where one person has faith and the other doesn't. And sometimes the person with faith thinks to themselves, oh, over the course of time, the other person will change. Or maybe they're both thinking that about each other. I think on those kind of fundamental issues, well, first of all, the Bible says that we shouldn't marry that way.
Right.
Okay. But I think just even if you just sit back and think about it, those issues are so fundamental, they're going to come up and it's going to cause a problem.
Right.
So I would advise people like, man, don't just rush into marriage for like fairy tale reasons and not consider that you're not compatible in the most fundamental ways. Okay, that's one way it can happen. But the other way it can happen, and this is common as well, is that someone becomes a Christian in the course of their marriage and their other spouse does not. In which case, the Bible also gives some advice about how to proceed in your marriage, that you should give it your best go, that you should truly try to do the best. But if at the end of the day, the other person, because of your faith, winds up leaving, then, 1 Corinthians 7 says it's okay to let them go. And I think, of course, there will be plenty of people who, out of one of those two scenarios, wind up married to someone who's not a Christian and they are a Christian. And for sure, navigating that is just like an extra challenge. Every marriage has challenges. That's going to be an extra challenge. And I think try to draw close to God and, follow him as best as you can to, I would say if you're married to someone who's not a Christian, just, do your very, very best to serve them as a Christian witness, love them as a Christian witness, pray for them as a Christian witness. But if in the course of the marriage, going back to what Andrea says, there's like abusiveness or, the person finally is like, I don't love you anymore. You're a different person. You became a Christian. I wanted you to be a pagan with me or, whatever.
Right.
If they want to leave, then the Bible says, go ahead. God releases you from that. So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but those are the thoughts that come to my mind, and it happens.
Yeah.
I think if you're part of a Christian community, then you're going to know people who are Christians and their spouse is not.
Yeah.
That's really, it's common.
Yeah.
It happens, and every marriage is different, so the challenges that each marriage is going to face is different. But yeah, I guess that's my...
Andrea, any advice or encouragement for someone in that same situation?
Yeah, that's a tough situation for sure. And I think like that is the ultimate self-sacrificial, when you are continually like sacrificing for that person and you just feel like, wow, we're just not, and that person's not reciprocating and things like that. It's really tough. You go to the Lord, ask for a lot of wisdom, but, I do think that you try and work things out because, it really, and especially when you have kids involved too, I mean, it's pretty tough on everybody. But I think, like my message to those who are in abusive relationships, like seek wisdom, seek counsel, seek help, and you pray for your spouse, you pray for their spiritual renewal or spiritual birth.
Yeah. I believe God blesses the household, especially when there's a Christian in that household, that there's a reason why you became a Christian, or at least, you're involved in church and faith, and God can work through all of that.
Now, there's something else I'd like to say. I'm probably hijacking how you want this podcast to go when I do it.
No problem.
But, because we said before we started filming this interview that neither Andrea or I were too interested in doing this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And as we've done it, it's become more obvious to me why I wasn't that interested in it.
Okay.
And I think maybe this is my attempt to at least say something about why I'm not that interested. I think this is the problem with this kind of podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No problem.
This is the problem with this kind of podcast, is that people who are listening in, I think just by our human nature, we tend to compare ourselves to other people. And Andrea and I have our marriage and we have the blessing that comes out of our marriage, but I don't want anyone listening in thinking to themselves like, I
Everything's
wish it was more like that, or
roses.
everything's good. I mean,
Everything's
yeah.
perfect. Last week we had a checkup where I was like, "Hey, dude, you need
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
the dishes."
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, whenever you're listening to other people's story, there's always some part of us that I think, and this is probably part of our fallen nature too, we can become jealous of. And I think this is one of the problems of just social media is that everyone sees like the good pictures, no one sees the bad times. And then you think, oh, my life is so much worse than everyone else. And I think actually like one of the reasons there's such an increase in depression, and it's because people are faced with all these images or these snapshots of things that look great, but under the surface is no different than mine. But
yeah, absolutely.
anyway, I was thinking about this, and I think like everybody who's listening in, their marriage is going to be different than ours. Their relationship is going to be different than ours, which is why I'm hesitant to like, oh, look at our relationship.
Right.
No, I mean, I'm jealous of you too.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I think like married people are jealous of single people. Single people are jealous of married people. And I guess I'm just thinking about Psalm 16. There's a line in that psalm that I've come to appreciate. It says, "The boundary lines for me have fallen in pleasant places. I have a delightful inheritance." And I think about this because in ancient Israel, everyone got a plot of land and there were like boundary lines. And you got your field and your land, and then someone might have, why is their land better than my land? And then that person would be like, well, why don't I have the tower that they have in their land? I mean, I think it's easy for us, like, even to go on a car ride and drive by other people's homes and be like, oh man, I wish my house was more like that house.
My
How
family
come they
lets
have
that
a front
film.
porch and I don't have a front porch? Or
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all the kinds of things. And I think that's especially true in like marriages and relationships. And, we look at other people and we think, oh, why can't I have that? And I think at some point or another, why I appreciate this psalm, the boundary lines for me have fallen in pleasant places. I have a delightful inheritance, is that I think part of like faith in Jesus is recognizing that God has a plan for each one of our lives. No two people live exactly the same life. We don't live in the same time. We don't live in the same place. We all face different kinds of suffering. We all have different kinds of joy. We have different things that we're called to do in this world. And I think like developing some kind of gratefulness or thankfulness for what God's done for me, rather than thinking, look what they have and I don't. I mean,
Right.
people do this with money. How come they have money, I don't? How come they have this and I don't? How come they have that relationship and I don't? I don't know. I'm just thinking to myself, like, it's much better for us to just find some contentment and thankfulness with the life that God's given to us, and trust, whether you're in a good time or a bad time, whether things seem to be going well or they're not going well, that God does have a plan. And
Yeah.
man, the boundary lines for me have fallen in pleasant places, and I do have a delightful inheritance. And like, for me, I'm very thankful for my wife, for my family, for so many things in my life. And then there's, if I'm just honest, there's like other parts of me that find discontentment, and how come it can't be like that?
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy in our human nature to go to that discontentment side, when I think it'd be better to just trust God. He has a plan. Even if you're in a tough spot now, he's got you where he wants you.
Yeah.
And like comparison, I think,
It's the enemy of joy.
yeah, it's a killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good one. What'd you say? An enemy of joy. Yeah, it's better
Enemy of
to
all joy.
find contentment, and it's better to find delight in where God's put you now. And nobody knows our future. Nobody knows our story except for God.
Yeah.
And I think that's, especially when you bring up this topic of relationships, marriage, motherhood, everybody has their own parameters. They've all, God's intimately involved in each one of our lives, and cultivating some sense of gratefulness and contentment is probably a lot better than focusing on, what I don't have, or even look what they have. the comparison thing.
Yeah.
I think that I would never want anyone to think like, oh, Andrea and Scott have it all figured out. No, we don't. Like, we're always like, there's new challenges, there's new things we have to figure out. Like, and there's seasons where like I'm super busy or he's super busy. And like, sometimes you feel like two ships sailing in the night. And like, I know there's lots of people who work long hours and they're like, who are you? Like, oh, hey, I'll see you next Friday. Kind of, you know, like you get really busy and there's so many challenges. There's health challenges, family challenges. There's, you know, financial challenges. That's a big one. So nothing's ever perfect. And I will say, I'll just bring up one quick little story where one of the biggest challenges in our marriage, I think, was when we moved to Florida. And we were just talking about this last night. I was really mad. I didn't want to go. I was like, why are we moving to Florida? My family's in Idaho. I want to be closer to my family. No, I don't want to go. I was like, and he was like so convicted and convinced that this is where we were supposed to go. And I was like, I was really upset. And I was like, no, I want my family. I want to be by them. And like when my kids were little, I would be so jealous of other people that had their family. I was like, I have to fly 2 flights to get to my parents. It costs this much money. And, you know, my kids are being raised by their cousins and things like that. But he would always be like, Lord, you know, Andrew, you got to trust in the Lord. And, you know, and I was like, anyway, that was a huge struggle for us when we moved to Florida. It took me about 5 years to finally go, okay, now it's like home to us. And now I see how God has guided us and led us and why he wants us here. But it took a little while. So that was definitely a big thing in our marriage for a while.
Yeah.
Like just little seeds of bitterness and like, ugh, why? You know, why do we have to be here? And he'd be like, well, there's no CRCs up in Idaho. Actually, there was, but he didn't, like, he was like, the Lord wants us here. I don't know how to explain
closer when we were in Florida than we were in Africa.
I know. And that's the other part, too, is like, I was willing to move to Lithuania, but then the fact that, so it was me. It was a mindset, and it's like not being content, like, you know, just,
Yeah, I think your example or story or experience really puts flesh onto what Scott was talking about. It's like you could watch this type of podcast, which I think particularly is good for context and not for like an example to live up to. It's like, okay, that's it. Am I the only one struggling with this, or what's a different take on it if I don't? One thing I understand about Port St. Lucie is it could be very lonely. A lot of people travel here or move here and they don't get connected around. And so you're like, okay, what is normal? And I feel jealousy when there are other people with more established relationships and things like that. So I definitely understand. I mean, there could be to set up anyone as an example to follow is really dangerous because there's only, like you said, social media. So you're scrolling, you only see the highlights. You compare your highlights to other people's, or you compare your behind the scenes to other people's highlights is a common saying with that. And it's just one of those things that's so dangerous. So I really like that we have a reminder that we have a delightful inheritance. You know, boundaries are set by God in pleasant places. So this is a very, very good, powerful reminder, actually. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much for joining First Lady, Mr. Multiply, to this marriage episode. Happy Mother's Day, late Mother's Day to you guys. Thanks, Sherry, for the Cup, Disciple Standard Podcast. And join us on Patreon, where you can see some behind-the-scenes footage, some bonus post-show footage. And next week, we'll be talking about the future of Sunlight Christian Academy. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
The future is now.